What's going on, everybody? This is the drop for July 15th. Welcome back. So glad you're back. I'm glad I'm back. Happy about a lot of things. So I have a few new episodes to tell you about, and then I'm going to share with you an interview I just did with Marc Brownstein of the Disco Biscuits and Star Kitchen. Let's get into the updates. First, Billy Martin was a guest on Across the Margin. So in this latest episode, host Michael Shields talks with composer, percussionist, artist, educator, record producer Billy Martin, best known, of course, as a member of Medeski, Martin and Wood. He just released an album, Guilty, which includes input from a bunch of musicians, including John Medeski and Marc Ribot. Michael and Billy talk about the album, his work with the Creative Music Studio, and coming up in the New York scene in the 80s. So check that out. Secondly, the Grey Boy All-Stars are on Inside Out with Turner and Seth. So not sure if you all know, but the Grey Boy All-Stars are coming out with their first album in 7 years. It's going to be called Como de All-Stars. So Seth and Rob did a Zoom chat with Robert Walter and Elgin Park of the band. They talk about how this album came together after so long, why they chose to release the record now, and talk about a bunch of tour stories, early days of the band, and get into all kinds of discussions. So check that out and check out the new Grey Boy All-Stars stuff coming out. Okay, number 3, I want to tell you about the Daily Soundcheck is continuing with Japan 2000. So the soundchecks are continuing. Anyone who listens to that show knows that Mike has been going through the soundchecks in chronological order, arrived at Japan 2000 and called up his friend Dave Calarco, aka Mr. Minor, to help. And in this episode, they talk about the 6/15/2000 soundcheck. So this Japan 2000 run is crazy and deserves a lot of discussion. And the soundcheck is cool as well. It includes a rare version of the Happy Whip and Dung song and a look behind what was going on with the stage crew in Wind or a Bug. The soundchecks are always interesting, always funny, and there's a lot here to dig into. So check that out. All right, so finally I want to bring you an interview that I just did with Marc Brownstein, of course, about Disco Biscuits, Star Kitchen, and a lot more. So we're going to get into the interview in just a minute. I will say that the new Star Kitchen single called Entirely comes out officially this Friday. There's a hilarious story about the name of this song, which Marc will get into in the interview. But we talk a lot about Marc's creation of Live Lesson Masters, where that's going. We talk a lot about the Disco Biscuits. We get into some conversation and stories about 97 Phish, including Marc backstage and talking to Mike about the 97 Phish funk and how that relates to Star Kitchen. We talk about Headcount. We talk about a lot more. It was a lot of great stories, a fun conversation, and really appreciate Marc joining us. He's a really, really good dude. So let's get into it now, and thank you all for joining. We'll see you all back here tomorrow. Peace. All right, I'm here in person with Marc Brownstein. What's up, man?
How's it going?
It's good. This is my first in-person interview since I interviewed Adam McDougall on March 5th in Washington, D.C., and maybe the first one for you since...
I have not done anything in person. I've hardly left the block, and this is it. This is first in-person interview. First, I insisted for all the listeners out there, I've insisted that we do this in person and not on Zoom.
It's true, and I'm glad we did it. We're in my garage, and Marc skateboarded here, so it's convenient. Thank you for coming over. I know you've been up to a lot of stuff over the past few months. How are you doing? How are you recovering? How's Live Lesson Masters? Like, how's your life at this point, however many months into quarantine we are?
Yeah, listen, I feel privileged and lucky to be in a situation that I'm in. You would look outside of our houses here where we live in Pennsylvania and everything looks normal. You look out onto the porch and you see kids walking around the neighborhood and people are playing, and there's this little bit of a sense of normalcy at this point in the pandemic in this part of the country. You know what I mean? So it hit us hard. It hit so hard here in Pennsylvania. There was sirens, and RJ moved into the neighborhood halfway through this, but for the first couple weeks before you got here, there was sirens all day long and all night long, just sirens going on, and it was a little bit unnerving to know that what was going on out there. I'm personally, have been keeping busy, and for me, that's the most important thing. The Biscuits got shut down on March 12th. We showed up for the Fillmore, and John our guitarist John Barber, he looked at me and I looked at him, and and we kind of were just like, this doesn't feel right. And then Aaron walked into the room and we were like, hey, this doesn't feel right to us. And Aaron was like, it doesn't feel right to me, And then Alan walked in a couple minutes later and we were like, hey, bud, I think we're going to pull the plug on this. And it took only about 2 minutes. John was like, let's go into the studio. And like within a minute, we were booking a studio, and we knew like there was a purpose, and that's kind of how it is. If we're all going to be here together, let's record. So we recorded a couple songs, March 13th and 14th, and then March 15th, I started the Live Lesson Masters. Idea started to mull around in my head. By the 18th, my partner on that, Alicia Carlin, was on board and building, and by the 23rd, we launched. And so it's been hectic, I taught I looked at the data yesterday. I taught 197 lessons in the first 3 months.
Wow.
I did 165 sort of meet and greet we call them chills, on the site, and 17 DJ sets. And I had a goal. Like, I knew that I had surgery coming up, and I had a goal. I wanted to be able to take a month off without kind of freaking out about not being a touring musician, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I just worked and hustled and hustled and hustled, and this month I'm off, and I'm actually, it's been nice. I went in, I did a surgery 2 weeks ago. There was about 4 or 5 days of intense pain, and actually it was delayed by a week. It was like after the surgery, I was like, this is fine, and about a week in, the pain set in. Doctor told me, he's like, you're not out of the woods yet, the pain comes in a week. Spent about 4 days just kind of like crying, and about 3 or 4 days ago, I came out on the other side of that and kind of just got back to work. We're doing a rebrand on Live Lesson Masters on August 3rd, and we're just hustling and putting it together. For those who don't know, Live Lesson Masters is livelessonmasters.com is a website that is basically an aggregate of creators that are out there, whether it's musicians, production folks, lighting people, fitness instructors, chefs, who are doing one-on-one lessons, meet and greets, like a lot of kind of performances have started to happen. Our like some of our best sellers, quote unquote, best bookers, I like to call them bookings, are Al from Mo. He's doing these private parties, man, house party with Al every Friday and Saturday night. And they all get booked, and it's like 10 to 15 or 20 people on 10 different Zoom windows. And he's doing these amazing sets. He posts the set lists on Instagram in the morning, and I'm like, man, it's like moth into he's all kinds of covers, Dead songs, Phish songs, and it's just like, man, Al is doing this. He's going in, and like, you hang with the fans. It's private. It's like, it's like going in their living rooms and doing a private party. Yeah. And we've been doing that. He's been doing it on Zoom, where there can be improvements on it, and we're working on that. You know what I mean? We're working on bringing something so that Al can really be interacting with these people with like the highest quality audio and the highest quality video. And so there's a lot going on, and I'm feeling pretty good about it all.
That's amazing. And Live Lesson Masters is so cool. And I don't know if it felt to you like when I first heard about it, and you actually talked to Bob Crawford about it on his podcast. And it's like sort of like once I saw it, I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense, And the best ideas often are ones that like you filled a need at the exact perfect time. Like, did it feel like when you thought of it that it was like, oh yeah, this is so obvious, why are we not doing this?
It took me 2 days. So the first thing that happened was the getting over to the vulnerability of admitting to my fans that I couldn't get through 3 months without working. It wasn't, I knew, by the way, I knew it was 18 months. Like I have a friend of a friend's at Department of Homeland Security, and he said, prepare not to work for 12 to 18 months. That was in January. Okay. So I knew that, and then we canceled the tour because of my eye.
Right.
So it was like, and we barely played last year. We were already like, our tour was the first tour in 5 years.
And you were planning on playing
it was like, here we were on the first night of what was about to be the biggest like year and gross in by every metric, biggest grossing year, biggest by how many fans come, by every engagement is at the top where it's ever been for the Disco Biscuits, you know what I mean? And of course, classic global pandemic. But on the Monday, I was like, I'm going to do something, and I made a post, and the demand was massive. On the Tuesday, I was in a spreadsheet, and that's when I was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of work. Like, not the lessons. Like, who's going to book this? How am I going to get paid? Like, am I going to be chasing fans down with my Venmo for like after I forgot to get paid? By the way, all these things happen in the first week.
I'm sure.
And then what platform am I going to do it on? How am I going to interact with the people? Am I emailing with my fans? Like, how is this going to go? So then Wednesday morning I woke up and it was Pete Shapiro. Like it always is. It was Peter Shapiro in my head. By the way, Peter Shapiro has nothing to do with the story other than he popped up like a ghost figure in my head on my shoulder, like that little dude from the Flintstones or whatever, the Jetsons or whatever. Peter Shapiro in my ear saying, how does it scale? Does it scale? How does it scale? And I like... It's just at Headcount, you have an idea and it goes through Peter Shapiro's does it scale filter. Like instantaneously, any idea on any phone call for 10 years, the last 10 years, somebody like, well, we could do this and it's an initiative and you go out into the, does it scale? Immediately everything goes into Peter. So people wonder like, why is Peter Shapiro so successful? Like, how is Peter Shapiro so successful? What does he have that other people don't have that he can make all of these businesses massively well-known and successful, that he could buy relics, that he could buy wetlands, that he could reopen the Capitol Theater, start a global Brooklyn Bowl, chain. Yeah. And the answer is, whenever there's an idea, he immediately runs it through a does it scale filter. And that is something for people who are thinking about entrepreneurship. That is a really good question to start with. Where does it scale this way? Does it scale that way? Sometimes you don't even know where it's going to scale. You start it and you find out. So I said to myself, where does it scale? And the first place that I thought that it could scale would be more musicians. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I wasn't thinking about fitness. I wasn't thinking about chefs. I wasn't thinking about live shows, which we've done, like all these other places where I wasn't thinking about group classes where it scales out with the fans by 10 to 15 or 20. I was just thinking more musicians one-on-one. Yep. And that was the first thing that hit, and that was within a minute of that question being asked, the vision started to have some clarity. And then, as with great ideas, with other great ideas, quickly people start to take them and say, hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that? Hey, let's do some meet and greets. Pony from Humphreys was like, what about meet and greets? Like, my fans don't all play bass, but they all want to have a Budweiser with me at 5 p.m. Those were his exact words. Yep. And we were like, meet and greets, great idea. You know what I mean? Yeah. So... That's awesome. Man, the lessons thing, it's a I don't want to, at the risk of exposing a private conversation that I had with our top booker, Jake Sininger from Humphreys McGee, I said to him, thanks so much for trusting me and us to be a part of this, and I really appreciate you being there for me as well. And he said, oh my God, thank you for having me on your platform. It's literally a lifesaver. So. Wow. For other musicians, come on board. Yeah. For other people out there who are fitness, apply at livelessonmasters.com and we'll try to work you in. Cool. That's awesome. And at the beginning of it all, 2020 started with my retinal detachment on January 6th. On Jam Cruise, right? Yeah. And then on January 14th, I had the surgery, right? Okay. And then on January 28th, I had to go out to Colorado for Denver Comes Alive Festival with Star Kitchen. And we did that Denver Comes Alive thing was super cool, but the way that we were able to make it work was we had shows on both weekends, and Eddie Roberts said we can use his house in the middle of the week and go into Color Red Studios and record a little bit. And so 2020 is like the most interesting kind of journey because there's all of these things that have been happening. Almost none of them. I've played 3 live shows or 4 live shows, 3 shows in Chicago to start, and the 2 or 3 that we did with Star Kitchen at the end of that month.
Yep.
And but yet at the same time, Star Kitchen went in the studio and recorded our first songs that we've ever recorded in the studio, original songs, and the Disco Biscuits went into the studio after the shows shut down and recorded the first songs that we've recorded in 11 years.
Yeah.
And forget Star Kitchen and the Disco Biscuits and just look out into the scene, and there's more creation, artistic creation and pivots and, and creativity going on than perhaps ever in our history as musicians. And there's something to be said for what this pandemic has done, which is it's screeched society to a halt, something that perhaps needed to happen, both for many reasons, but for creatively to get people to get off of their phones and off of the constant rat race and the social media world, and concentrate on what are they going to create today. And they're not traveling, and traveling is the number one thing that impedes creativity, is you getting up and going and getting on the bus. And then so everybody, great creators take big breaks to create, you know, and it's like, so this is the silver lining. It's horrible that it has to be this way, and that there's so much, devastation and death and sickness associated with what's also going to be looked back on a golden era of creativity in all scenes. So we got into the studio and we put together our first releases, which for Star Kitchen, this is coming out this week.
Yeah. So it's called Entirely. You mentioned that week in between where you were at Eddie Roberts' house, the new Master Sounds. So what was that like recording? I mean, you guys had been playing together for a while, and that was the first time you recorded, which I guess in the jam scene, that's not that abnormal. You play with people and then you record later. But what was that like finally getting to do some tracks? I understand there are more tracks coming in addition to the one that's coming out this week.
Yeah, we recorded 2 originals and like 3 or 4 covers just for content. But it's funny because this is why I think that they said that we smoke entirely too much weed, which is why how the name of the song got named. There's some suit walking around the record label telling us that we smoke entirely too much weed in Denver.
Entirely.
at a record label in a studio. Like, come on. But like, oh wow, Star Kitchen, such stoners. They don't clearly they don't do anything with their lives. But people come into their studio with 8 songs and bang out 8 songs in 2 days. Mm-hmm. And we came in with no songs. We came in and we're like, oh, we're going to write. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Star Kitchen's like an interesting project in that we haven't really figured out our writing flow yet. There's not like a main writer. Like we have like right now we're doing like the quarantine kind of writing where we'll get like a bunch of drum beats and then Rob will throw down some keyboard lines on top of them and send them to me, and then I'll put in the bass and Danny will put in the guitar, and we're like writing that way, and we've actually come up with some really good stuff that way. But in the studio we kind of were doing it like, all right, now we'll start like the groove, and we were doing that same thing but all in the same room together. It was like, like how do we do this? And then so we were there for like 3 days, but we only got these 2 tracks done, which for them was like not a lot of output. But for us, it was like the most productive we had ever been by so far. You know what I mean? We were like, this is fucking working. We're a young band that's figuring out what our flow is. It's not, there's not a main songwriter who's like, here's your songs.
Right.
And I'm like hands off on it because it's not my scene. I'm admittedly I'm learning the 60s and 70s funk and soul music through this project. Mm-hmm. I'm like, the project is educationally based for me. Like I'm doing this for a reason, which is to learn all of this music, to go through and learn all of the songs with other people who are local in my neighborhood. I wanted to learn how to play like Motown and learn how to play like James Brown funk and learn how to play, all the way through into like the second revival of funk, like learn kind of take a deep dive on what Grey Boy All-Stars do. And other bands of that ilk, all the way up to Soul Live and, stuff that's contemporary, it's just kind of the bands like Soul Live or, Lettuce, like they're just like, they did that. This is what they do. Mm-hmm. They like play this music and they kill it. They play it to a T, you know what I mean? And I just love those bands so much that I wanted to take a dive into what inspired them. To be that. And so that's where I've been at, is kind of going back and learning all the James Brown music, and learning how they do it, and then also kind of switching it up a little, like kind of bringing what I do into the jam part of it. So it's like, let's learn this song and now let's like stretch the funk in a psychedelic manner, know, in a way that, like maybe Phish would or the Dead would or the Biscuits would, but over the funk beats, which actually ends up kind of bringing us back to what originally inspired this journey, which is I'm a huge Phish fan.
I was going to ask about 97 Phish and how much you've been thinking about that.
So I'm a huge Phish fan, and in 97 I was not blown away by this new direction that they were taking. I was one of the jaded Phish fans from 93 to 95 that was like, or 92 to 95 that was like, every jam sounds the same now. There's the loop sound, and they just go into the funk, and then they stop, and they're doing these stop-start jams, and it's like happens 3 or 4 times a night, every night. And I was like on Fall 97, I saw 5 shows, and admittedly I caught the 5 weakest shows of the tour. I really did. Looking back, like everyone's like, oh, those weren't the great ones. Like I went to the wrong night of Worcester. I just got all the wrong shows. But nonetheless, it wasn't that. It was that I wasn't ready for this profound change that my favorite band had decided to make. Looking back, I prefer it. Right. I prefer 97 to 94, 95. It's less frenetic. It's more controlled. It's funkier. It's like everything that I didn't love about it is what I love about it. I'm a late bloomer with music and with everything. I let other people love shit first, and then once it's fully vetted, I hop on later. I didn't get into Radiohead until like 15 years after everyone else. I just like, it's like, that's how I am.
That's fair.
So I got into this situation with a friend of mine, Melissa Wilson, who is friends with Gordo, and she's like, hey, like Phish was in town. It was December shows, and she was like, hey, I'm hanging with Mike tonight, like I asked if we can invite you, and he said, yes, can you come down? Can I come down? So we go down, and they're at the Four Seasons down on Columbus Boulevard, and we go up into his room, and, I'm like fanning out. I'm like, holy shit, I'm in Mike Gordon's fucking hotel room at the Four Seasons. He's got like a little basket with like folded underwear. And I'm like, dude, rock star, dude. A basket with folded, clean fucking tidy whities.
That's awesome.
Tidy whities, Mike. It's true.
Hilarious.
They were tidy. I don't know what you're wearing now. I know you've had quite the come on with fashion, but it was tidy whities, let's be honest. Okay, and some fucking socks. So just 2 regular white tube socks. So
that sounds about right.
So he hands me his bass, right? And he's like asking me a couple questions. He quizzes me like, what's the most important note besides the first note? And I'm like, the 5. And he's like, great. And I toyed with his bass a little bit, but it was like, and then he put on his favorite band. He's like, I'm going to play my favorite band. And his favorite band at the time was Grey Boy All-Stars, by his own account, So he played the Grey Boy All-Stars, which I had seen maybe once at the Wetlands, and was like, oh, this is cool. I love the Grey Boy All-Stars, Mike's into the Grey Boy All-Stars. It's so fucking cool. And then he's like, oh, let's go smoke some weed on the bus. And I'm like, this is like, by the way, like, I mean, I remember every single thing about this day. As a Phish fan, like a kid Phish fan,
of course,
pretty much the coolest thing that could happen to a Phish fan,
I'm in.
So we're going on the bus. We go to the back of the bus. We smoke a bowl, and he's like, "Oh, let me show you this video that the band's been watching every night after the shows. Like Fishman makes us watch this video." And it's had like this profound effect on how we play, you know, and now we just like slowed everything way down and we're just getting into like kind of like sitting in funk grooves. So he throws on this James Brown video and he plays the whole thing. We sat there in the back of the bus and watched this hour-long James Brown set together, you know, puffing bowls and it got to this one section, and it was like the stop-start section. He's like, this is where we're getting the stop-start thing from, and like we're basically just copying this video like as much as we can. We come in, we watch it every night, multiple times, and then we go out on stage, and it was just like a moment of clarity, of just like profound like understanding of what was happening to this band that I didn't know what was happening. My favorite band had changed, and I didn't know why. And then somehow I'm ended up in the bus with the bass player, and he's telling me what it was. And it gave me a moment of like, I took a step back, and I was like, oh, this is incredible. This is so cool. And then I got it. It was like, I get it. Yeah. Like, now I get it. Like, and of course, they're artists. They can do whatever they want. It's not my band. It's their band. Like, if I want my own band, and I have my own band, like, this is 97, we had just started. They came to we were playing the TLA on their other off night, and Mike came and hung out. They had just played a 47-minute or 52-minute like Runaway Jim at the Worcester, right? Yeah. And Benji was backstage. Yeah. And Benji Eisen we're talking about here, and Billy Kreutzmann's now manager, anybody who doesn't know. And Benji Eisen was there, and he was like he was like up in Mike's face. No offense, Benji, I'm just telling it like I see it. He was like right in Mike's face, and he was like, "Did you hear that Mo played a 52-minute meet or something?" Like in response, and I was like, "No, why is Benji talking to Mike about Mo's 52-minute meet in response to the?" At any rate, this was back in the day when bands used to compete about how long their jams was. Oh, that never stops, Spafford.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Still doing it.
It definitely doesn't stop.
How long was Goose's longest jam recently?
I think they're pushing 30.
Goose is pushing 30.
Yeah, they had a couple that are close to 30.
So that was it.
That's amazing.
So yes,
it came full circle.
3 years ago, I had a moment where I was like, I got there. It took me 20 years to get from Mike telling me that Grey Boy was his favorite band and the James Brown video was happening, for me to then take that moment where I was like, okay, I'm ready now to take that deep dive into this music that Phish took 20 years ago. I consciously connected these things together. In my mind, I was like, there's this moment where I was like, okay, I want to study what they were studying in 97. And I'm not going to try to change the Biscuits into a funk band the way that Phish was changed into a funk band in 97. So in an effort to let the Biscuits be the Biscuits, I started a new project where I could deep dive. And so are the Biscuits getting funkier? You tell me. I think so. Like, I think that this 3-year study has given me the ability to like know kind of what to do in those situations where we do get into slower, funkier jams with the Biscuits. And sometimes people would give Alan shit about not like having the right swing or something when it was funky, but I would like to take responsibility for it. Like, it wasn't Alan, it was me. Like, you know, like I couldn't fit into that pocket and figure out where to be, and it was making Alan sound clunky. But like, it wasn't Alan. He was fucking on fire, dude. I was like a little clunky in it, and now that I'm getting smoother in those pockets, people are like, man, Alan's gotten so much better at the funk. And so it's like, now he's taking all the credit. Like he was taking all the shit. He deserves the credit now.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. I definitely think you can hear that influence. Well, that's cool. That's a cool full circle story, and everyone who's watching or listening can hear like dogs barking and trucks driving by because we're outside.
We're outside.
So before I let you go,
Delaware County. I always try to.
I want to ask you. We just mentioned Philly a few times. So what was it like playing at Citizens Bank Park a couple of weeks back? Because I watched it and it was.
Still got my hat.
That's the hat from there. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm the only biscuit that answered the text message or email about what size hat you're in.
Okay.
So I'm the only one that got like the authentic fitted.
Oh, nice.
You know what I mean?
No one else got it. They're just sitting there.
Answer your emails, bro. But it's better because like Barber. This isn't his hat style. Yeah. And Magner either.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they didn't know what their fitted size is.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So they never answered, and they got the perfect, they got like the fan hat.
Yeah.
Curved brand. Philly's dad hat. Dude, let me tell you. A lot of people have commented on it. I don't read any comments, so I have no idea what people have said. Okay. So I just know that there's been a lot of comments. Yeah. I'll see. So I don't know what people are saying, but here's where I sit. I saw Goose talking about how it's hard to play these shows streaming because you've maybe they didn't realize how much the crowd was a part of the show and how much that affects the energy.
Yep.
Yes. Except for one thing. Like a guy like me that suffers from like anxiety, and other kind of stage related fright and stuff. Mm-hmm. I often feel that the best set of the night is the one that nobody has heard backstage. Many times we will just play the most unbelievable fucking thing.
Yeah.
Not recorded, not videoed, into the ether. Ether? Is that the right?
Yeah.
I want to use. I don't want to use the wrong word on a
yeah.
podcast and sound like an idiot.
No.
Word check.
Into ether works.
Into the ether. Gone forever. So, and then we'll get out onto stage and I'll just like clam up a little bit and it won't be as good as it was. Now, is it good? Sure, it's the Biscuits. It's always pretty good. Yeah, always, but like always those magic moments that come every couple shows where it's like, boom, they hit it, and the band's on fire now. We're in the zone, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
That flow.
Yeah.
That happens when we're not being recorded and nobody's watching more often. Mm-hmm. It's like we're like automatic when nobody's watching, And so I listened back to the Citizens Bank Park show, and I was like, damn, this is one of the best sets we've played since we're back. And we haven't played in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like nothing. Like we played in the studio, which is different than playing a show. We just came back and picked right up where we left off. And so for me, I like the playing in front of no one. I know you're out there. I see the camera. The dude had the thing. He was right in my face. Right. The guy, like the guy who runs up with the roaming cam. We asked him what he does at the stadium, and he said he's the guy who like rolls around the whole stadium and then like kneels next to the crowd and waits, and then they go to him and it's the crowd shot. Yeah. He was like up in our mugs, man, and running around, and so we knew you're out there. We're talking to you, but playing in an empty venue, like maybe weird, like regular size venue, but that one, it was just fucking cool. It felt huge. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's venues that are like, come play at our venue, and it's not going to feel huge. We're just going to be streaming from a 200 person or 300 person venue or whatever it is. That's not going to, but like that felt magnificent.
Yeah, it looked magnificent on camera too. It was
and then just like kind of the classic Biscuits is like, like business is completely shut down. We have no way of working. We have no way of bringing in income. And then we get together and we just raise money for charity. Yeah. Loved it. We did that same shit when Sammy quit the band back in the day. We were like, we don't have a drummer. Like we don't have a band. And like it came to like the one show and it was like Hurricane Katrina relief with Joe Russo on drums. Like, like that was like, it's like, it is like classic Biscuits to like not have anything going on and be like, we need to raise money for a cause. And I'm not like tooting my own horn. I'm not trying to be like,
you guys did raise
horn tooter.
Which is awesome.
Like I'm just looking at like a pattern emerging where like something happens, we break up, there's no drummer, and then we'll go and do something to try to raise a lot of money for a cause. And I think what it is the cause. The cause is so important that it brings the band together.
Yeah.
It's like it's about the cause.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we have to do something right now.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And that's what
did.
brings us onto a call in the first place.
Right.
Like, that's what got the show to happen, was
going.
like, we need to fucking do something right now. And that felt good. Like, it just felt good to know, like, this is a time where we are in need.
Yeah.
But that wasn't where we put the priority, thankfully. It was just so, it's so good to be a part of a bigger movement going on. And you see everybody out in the fucking streets, everybody across the country. I saw you out in the streets.
I was in the streets.
Yeah, like, for my one protest, I'm not like, I haven't been going to protests over and over and over again,
Yeah, me neither.
But the one protest that I did show up for, you were there. I liked seeing that.
Yeah, it was good.
But, it's like, you got it. Like, we're like, there's so many avenues that you can be working to make positive change in, And with Headcount, but I would be remiss not to mention that we're in a 2020 is the most important election, and it doesn't need to be said, does it? Like, 2016 was the most important election of our life, and we fucking blew it. And listen, did you see the meme about the countries that have basically eradicated coronavirus and they all have women leaders?
Yeah.
And like the ones that don't, like, Brazil and Russia and us and the male leaders that are completely blowing it. And then kind of you look back on 2016 through that lens. Yeah. And like, Hillary had a plan, like it's in her book, like the pandemic, there's like a whole chapter on pandemic response.
Right.
It's just like, you think about, like, we had a shot here and she blew it as much as anybody. She blew it. She didn't campaign in Wisconsin. She didn't campaign in Michigan. She blew it. But, we all blew it. And
but now it's actually life or death. Like, legitimately.
Yeah, this is life or death. We're here. 2020, most important election of our life, clearly. Headcount.org, go to it and check to make sure that you're not being purged from the voter rolls. Check to make sure that you don't, like, for me, my polling place changed.
Okay.
During, our polling place was over on that side of the tracks. Now it's on this side of the tracks. And so they're moving polling places around in coronavirus. They're changing how that all works. So Headcount.org has become a massive resource for voter information. Like, it's all there. Find out who's on the ballots. Find out who you're voting for. Find out, like, what are the down ballot, initiatives that are on your ballot. It's all there. We're working on kind of trying to push a lobbying effort towards vote by mail nationally, which has to happen. And the fact that this is being politicized is ridiculous. Vote by mail has already been available in dozens of states, and it wasn't a political issue until right now.
Right.
So
the first thing I did when I moved to this area is I went to Headcount and registered. So
that's it.
Now I'm registered here. And my vote will count for once in, like, the past 20 years of living in D.C., so,
So that is something about living in Pennsylvania, is that we are in a swing state. And, but it's like, you looking at other states, like Texas is almost a swing state. Arizona is kind of a swing state right now. Things are like
right now, everything's a swing state.
The electorate is changing.
Yeah.
So be a part of it. Like, I'm glad we touched on that. But, it's happening right now. It's like a crazy, we're living in a crazy time where people are raising money for this and for that, and there's no sports and there's no concerts. So, like, issues are front and center.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, nobody's not engaged.
Right.
And so choose your issue and go out and, and raise money and make, it's like John Lewis said, make good trouble. John Lewis, the
of course.
congressman, always says, make good trouble.
Yeah.
Go out, get in the streets, make good trouble. Be on the right side of history. Now is the time to now's that time to choose that side.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming over and spending so much time here. It's been fun. We're going to have to do it again soon.
Just always a lot to talk about.
There is.